fence line where the wild winds run, where the skies stretch wide and kiss the sun. The sagebrush whispers, the rivers hum. This land's a story just begun. Wyoming calls where the heart beats free. Mountains rise and dreams run deep. Past the borders, past the sign, there's a world alive beyond the fence line. Boots hit gravel and the prairie sings with every hoofbeat. The frontier rings from ranchers' hands to miners' veins. The spirit of the West remains. Wyoming calls where the heart beats free. Mountains rise and dreams run deep. Past the borders, past the sign, there's a world alive beyond the fence line. So come ride with me through the dust and time. Find the soul of Wyoming beyond the fence line, beyond the fence
Wyoming Beyond the Fence Line, where we step past the headlines and into the truth. This show isn't about left or right, it's about what's real in Wyoming, across the country, and around the world. No spin, no talking points, just facts, context, and honest conversation. If you're tired of being managed instead of informed, you're in the right place. Let's go beyond the fence line. And now, here is your host, Joseph Kibler, candidate for Wyoming governor in 20.
Hey, good morning, Wyoming. Happy Thursday. What is it, March 12th already? Halfway through the month. What's going on? Hope you guys are doing well. So today is going to be part 2 of our series where we are sharing about the Constitutional Party's platform. So, Wyoming Constitution Party's platform. So, today we're going to cover 6 or 7 more topics that I hope you guys enjoy. We're going to have some fun today. Boy, it is finally, I say finally because I feel like normally it's a lot more windy in Wyoming than it has been the last year or two, even. But wow, that wind is howling out here in Cheyenne today. I reading yesterday that we might be seeing something like 100-mile-an-hour winds. Well, hopefully that'll blow me around town as I'm getting around with my errands and stuff like that today. So with that, let's go ahead and get this party started. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And I'll put myself down here in the corner like I usually do when I share my screen. By the way, I was having a conversation yesterday with someone. Joseph, I really like your shows, but I noticed that you're sniffling a lot. Well, you know what? I've had this pesky little head cold, post nasal drip thing going on for, oh gosh, I think the better part of a month. It's been driving me nuts and it just will not go away. So bear with me if I sniffle during the show or perhaps try to clear my throat. But that is what's going on. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. But here we are. Nonetheless, I can still talk. So we're going to do it, sniffling or not. We're going to keep moving forward. So let's take a look at this. Today, by the way, we're going to cover another 6 or 7 of the core planks and or principles of the Wyoming Constitution Party. The reason I'm doing these 3 episodes this week is just so that you can educate yourself on what we're looking at and why we've decided to go this way. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and put the link to the website down below just so that you guys can take a look for yourselves. Do your own homework, do your own research, reach out to the party and see if it's something that maybe, if you want to actually, be something different. It's been our campaign slogan. And if you realize that we actually need to be something different, to do something different in politics this election cycle, this midterm, the election coming up in November, this might be the answer for you. And that doesn't mean that we have to agree on 100% all the time. But hey, at least we're doing something that most are not willing to do, and that is have the harder conversations about the things that matter to you and I. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into a couple more of these planks. I'm not sure today's show might be a little shorter than usual. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Some of these topics you guys have heard me talk about over the past year, both on the live show or in person or just in general. I've released statements about them. And funny how that may be, lo and behold, that my statements are, well, really, really in line or in sync with the Constitution Party of Wyoming's thoughts on the topics as well. So with that, let's take a look. So yesterday we talked about life, liberty, and integrity. We talked about the right to property, given right of life, liberty, and the ownership and control of property. We talked about accountability, character and moral conduct, the cost of big government, constitutional amendments, and executive orders. That's what we talked about yesterday. So you guys can take a look at that show if you want to look at those issues. So let's look at the next one. Defense. We affirm that Wyoming has the right to a militia. We support an active, trained, and equipped state militia. We oppose any foreign forces on Wyoming soil and will not recognize orders or directives from the United Nations or any other international organization. So this is kind of an interesting one, folks, where we really do dive into, when it comes to principles, when it comes to planks, this idea that we are sovereign, that Wyoming as a state is sovereign, and that we do not and will not accept foreign directives or organized, armies or militaries on our soil from any international organization. And by the way, I would go a step further in this. I know we've had this conversation, and that is foreign ownership of Wyoming land, state or otherwise. Of course, if it's owned by the state, it's not owned by any foreign government, right, or entity. But the Wyoming land ought to be owned by Wyoming people. And that's the way it should be 100% of the time. So with that, let's go back. Let's go down to the next one. Let's talk about education. So you guys know that I've been very, very vocal about the education in Wyoming and how we keep spending more and more and more, and our results are going the opposite direction of spending. Right? No matter how much money you throw at the issue, it just does not really appear that we are making progress when it comes to education. And you guys know that I've been very vocal about this issue, and I've mentioned it quite a few times. And how I've talked about, if you want to keep public education, it's time to stop recalibrating it or trying to tweak it or adding this or changing that. It really, really is time to gut the thing and start over. It's really time to get back to the basics. Reading, writing, and arithmetic, and tack on some interest based learning like our CTE programs and things like that. So you have some interest based learning opportunities for our kids. But get back to the basics. It's what we've got to do. And while we have aspects of that perhaps going on, we are not getting to a point where, well, gee, we've really come up with a solution for public education and we're moving forward with it. We just keep messing with it. And by the way, I don't think throwing more money at the issue is going to solve the problem. In fact, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and post, because I don't want to spend this whole show talking about, this one issue, but I am going to go ahead and I want to post below for you in the comments my link to the show that I did about education. And the reason I'm going to do that is I know that I kind of made a brief statement there, but we need to kind of unpack that a little bit more. So if you want to watch my actual show on education, I think that would be a really, really smart idea. And so I'm going to go ahead and post that link down below so that you guys can get sort of a bit of perspective there on where I stand on education. So let's go ahead and read this. So we oppose accepting federal funds for education. The authority and responsibility of educating children belongs to their parents. We oppose the compulsory attendance laws, testing, and taxation as mandated by the government. We support unimpeded rights of parents to provide an education for their children in the manner that they deem best, including home, private, religious, or other schools. Pretty straightforward, guys. And you're going to find that a lot of what we see in this platform is aligned with what I've said all along. We've institutionalized education. So we've created an institutional bureaucracy for public education. How's that working out for you? Look at the numbers. It's not working out real great for us, guys. And so we've got to do something different with that. In order to do that, we got to be something different. We got to have a different conversation than we've been having when it comes to education. And you guys know that I've been having that different conversation for the better part of a year since we've been on this campaign trail and on this adventure together. So I encourage you to go to my YouTube channel where we've got that whole show about education so that you guys can kind of delve into where I stand on that and what's going on there. With that, let's go to the next one. So emergency management. We support Wyoming to manage its own emergencies to the exclusion of federal agencies. So basically just saying that, yeah, you know what? It may be that, at times we need help, right? We need help from our federal government, things like that. But that Wyoming should be able to have the capacity and capability to manage these things on its own. Again, very, very much about state sovereignty. Quite frankly, just like we should have federal sovereignty as a nation, we should have federal sovereignty. Boy, I'm losing my voice a little bit. Excuse me. Wow. So, the Constitutional Party of Wyoming believes in the sovereignty of the state in so many ways. But also, we also believe in a sovereign government, a sovereign federal government, which, by the way, in many, many ways, we've sold out, right, you guys? And this show is not about that topic today, but we need to think about what does sovereignty look like for a state? What about for a city or a county? What about for you as an individual? What does your own individual sovereignty look like? And having that in the great country that we are in America. So we've covered so far today defense, education, emergency management. Let's talk about crime and law enforcement. This is an important one for a lot of us. We are blessed in the state of Wyoming. When you look across the nation, we see different challenges in these areas, but we have a relatively safe space, a relatively safe state. And there, by the way, there is kind of one. Well, there are many reasons for that, but one of those core reasons is we are in all 50 states. We are considered, according to our research and studies and all of that, we are considered the most personal gun friendly state in the nation. As a result of that, we do see that reflect in our crime and our law enforcement in this state. So let's read what the platform has to say about this. So, the individual, that is you and I, is the first line of defense against crime and shall not be subject to civil or criminal liability for practicing self defense. Crime should be dealt with by the state and local governments without unrequested federal intervention or use of military force. We support the traditional principle of the posse comitatus act. Boy, the posse comitatus. Boy, I am having a hard time with that word, you guys. Act of 1778. I'm actually going to do something here real quick. I am actually not sure how to say that word. I know that might seem kind of silly, but I want to go ahead and see I don't know how to say that word, and maybe I'm just being dumb or my brain isn't working this morning. So let's see what this says. Comitatus. Okay, so Comitatus Act, you guys. There you go. So hey, you guys. I know I'm running for governor, but I don't always have all the answers. I don't always have all the words. Sometimes I need a little help there. So, Comitatus Act of 1778. The county sheriff is the primary law officer of his county. Any active law enforcement entity who enters a county must obtain permission from the sheriff, the local sovereign authority, right? We insist that the sheriff protect individuals against unconstitutional federal intrusion. This is kind of interesting if you guys think about it. The recent legislation that actually was vetoed by the governor and then also failed to undo the veto in relation to federal government intrusion or help when it comes to, I guess, it would be mostly things going on with the federal government's federal blah blah blah. Boy, I'm mincing words this morning, you guys. The tobacco and arms branch of the government, right? So we need to make sure that we are not allowing them to infringe on your rights, right? I'm having a little bit of a brain fade, a little bit of, I guess, the ATF. Yes, that's what I'm trying to find. The ATF. So what are we allowing the federal government to do with our personal rights? I'm having a little bit of a brain fade this morning, you guys. I think this time change is catching up with me. I don't know what's going on. Anyways, we'll continue on this journey. So basically, we want to make sure that the federal government doesn't have over-intrusive rights into our personal lives or into our sovereign state. And I think that's really important when it comes to crime and law enforcement. We've got to make sure we do that. Forgive me a little bit, you guys, this morning for a little bit of my brain fade. It's just kind of one of those mornings, I think. What is it? What days is it? Thursday? Is it Friday yet? I think maybe we need to get to Friday again and call it an early weekend or something, right, you guys? Let's talk about cronyism and corruption. So this is one of the things that's kind of, you guys know I have talked about this. I've talked a lot about free markets. And I've sort of asked the question in the past, have we gone so far from free market principles that we cannot return to them? And I ask that question genuinely. And I ask that question because in so many ways, we have distorted the free market with bureaucracy. And that applies to education, healthcare, property rights, and taxes, business, things like this, where we literally have distorted what free markets would normally do very, very, very well. But we just haven't really done that well. So, cronyism and corruption. We favor competitive bidding for all taxpayer financed projects. We oppose taxpayer money being given out as grants to businesses, prefer instead to let the free market and private initiative decide who will be economic winners and losers. We've heard a lot about this recently with the Wyoming Business Council. And I agree with this wholeheartedly. In fact, but I was having this conversation with someone just yesterday about competitive bidding for Wyoming tax finance projects. And I said, but here's the problem. They said, well, it is already privatized, Joseph, because we send it out for bid and three or whatever, however many private companies bid for the job, and we pick a private company to take the job. I said, well, wait a minute. Here is the problem, though, with cronyism and corruption in the process. And here's what it is. The problem is that and I'm just going to use this as an example, and it may not be a great one. The private market would pay, let's say, $200 to fix the door. Let's say that door is broken, and the private market would say, yeah, we'll pay $200 to fix the door. The problem that we have with government today in Wyoming and across this nation is that government's willing to pay $5,000 to fix the door. That distorts the free market value of the service and the product, and it really, really creates a lot of problems on Main Street. So government's willing to pay $5,000 to have you fix that door when the free market pays $200. That creates an extremely challenging situation for the free market. And so not only do we need competitive bidding, what we need to do is it needs to be based on what is the market paying? What is the free market? What is Main Street paying for that product? And that is what government needs to pay. Instead of this, I call it the golden toilet syndrome, right? Where, you might pay $70,000 for a toilet because government can or government will, right? When you can go to Home Depot and get a toilet for $350. It's absolute insanity. And it destroys the free market. And so this is a really, really big thing, you guys, that's really affecting all of our lives when you think about it, cronyism and corruption, and how it affects our food prices. It affects our energy prices. Did you know that 25% of everything that you and I sit here and make when we go to work every day, 25% of that is kind of going to feed this beast? It's going to feed this taxation, this massive spending, this out of control spending without accountability, this idea that government creates its own market instead of letting you and I and the free market create that market. So this is a really important issue for you guys. So let's see, we've covered 5. I'm going to cover one more today, and then we'll get into the rest of these tomorrow. So let's go ahead and talk about family. Guys, you guys know I've said this. Family is obviously the cornerstone of our culture. It's the cornerstone of who we are. And God designed family. It's so important. And I'm going to talk about boldly, I'm going to talk about the nuclear family and how the battle and fight against the nuclear family is really part of the core of our downfall as a culture and as a society. The law of our Creator God defines marriage as the covenanted union between one man and one woman, which is the foundation of the family. That's it, you guys. We oppose any legal recognition of homosexual marriage or civil unions and oppose government funding of benefits for partners of unmarried individuals. This is really simple, you guys. This is cornerstone. And you might call this old-fashioned. You might say, well, Joseph, that was a thing of the past, and we have been liberated, and we have all of these different meanings of things and different versions of families and the redefinition of family, and families can be this and can be that and can be that other thing over there. what we see when we destroy the core principle of the family as God has designed it is we see the downfall of society and culture. Value is found, personal value and worth is found around the kitchen table in that picture. That picture that you see there on the website, the family. Oh, by the way, beautiful Tetons in the background, right? It feels very Wyoming-esque, if you will. When you destroy that part of a culture or society, you destroy personal worth and value. Value is found around that kitchen table. Worth is found around that kitchen table. Truth is found around that kitchen table. I look at our own family, and we sometimes I get amazed at how often we fail to do this. And I'm just being transparent, honest. We're on the go. We've got the evening events. We've got archery going on. We've got get-togethers. We've got campaign things. We've got all the different things we run around and do. We've got Bible study. And so often we miss those moments where we're around the kitchen table like this, having those things. And it's just so important, you guys, so important that we focus on building, supporting, and allowing the nuclear family to thrive and survive in our great state of Wyoming. I mean, it's just so, so important that we do that. So what's coming up? Thank you guys, by the way, for joining me. I know that this is a little bit different because we're not really focused on one topic, but rather just sort of discovering and learning together on what we're looking at as far as a platform goes. I think it's really important that you guys understand where I'm coming from in this decision that I made to join the the Constitution Party of Wyoming. So important that we do that. So, what am I going to do tomorrow? Tomorrow we're going to talk about gun control. We're going to talk about health, care, and government. We're going to talk about nullification. We're going to talk about, actually, let's see. How much time do we have today? How many of these do we have left? We've got a couple more of these left. Why don't we go ahead and we're going to cover maybe 2 or 3 more here today. All right, well, let's see what we can do up to the top of the hour. Let's talk about healthcare and government. We oppose any federal intrusion into healthcare, including health insurance. We support freedom of choice, freedom to choose medical coverage and treatment without government interference, including mandates. We support the nullification of the Patient Protection Act and the Affordable Care Act of 2010. Healthcare, I was looking back over all my shows, and I haven't really talked about this, so I am going to do a show next week on healthcare, just so that you guys kind of understand where I stand on this. But this is one of those things. We talked just a little while ago about cronyism and corruption and bureaucratic overreach and institutionalized bureaucracy. And healthcare has become an institutionalized bureaucracy because of government intrusion into something that would function a lot better without government. It's interesting to me. I watched the legislative session this year, and of course, in the past years, and you watch as medical professionals have to get permission from government to provide certain types of care or whatever. And you think about that. It's like, wait a minute. Why don't you let the medical professionals decide on those kinds of medical issues rather than having to get permission from government for, let's say, something like ivermectin? How about you leave the personal choice to me and my healthcare professional when it comes to these medical decisions? But no, government has to be involved in every aspect of it. Government provides billions of dollars in corporate welfare and insurance subsidies that completely distorts the healthcare market. And so the Wyoming Constitution Party says no more. We don't believe that the federal government should be intruding into the healthcare marketplace. And that is why, by the way, you guys, that is why healthcare is so expensive. That is why, if you're a private payer, you can get an x-ray for $100 or $150. But if you use insurance, that x-ray now costs you $400 or $500. It's really, really distorted. And that is because of government intrusion into healthcare. Gun control. Let's talk about that for a minute. I also realized I have not done a Second Amendment show. So next week, I will do a Second Amendment show so we can talk about this in more detail. The God given and inalienable right to keep and bear arms secured by the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States and by the Declaration of Rights in the Wyoming State Constitution. We uphold this right and oppose all attempts to control, restrict the possession, and use of guns and ammunition. We oppose attempts to require registration of guns and ammunition. Pretty simple, you guys. And this always for me. And by the way, I do want to address this briefly. We need to stop legislating the Second Amendment to death. And what we need to do is shred everything we've got, and we need to go back to the basics of the Second Amendment right as displayed in the United States Constitution. And we need to leave the thing alone. But we keep tweaking it and clarifying it and doing all of these things, when what we really need to do is just roll back to it. And I'll talk about that more in my show on gun rights. We'll have a real conversation about guns. All right, nullification. We affirm the natural right of the states to nullify the actions of federal agencies and court decisions that usurp the powers not enumerated to them by the Constitution of the United States. This is an important one, you guys, where we as a state have a right, unless it's in the Constitution of the United States, to protect ourselves from the actions or the overreach or the invasion of the federal agencies and or courts. We must do this. And it's very, very important. Another great plank in the party platform. With that, we're about 3 minutes off. So let's take a look at what we're going to look at tomorrow. We're going to look at presidential electors. We're going to look at private property. We're going to look at privacy, religion. We're going to look at sanctity of life, search and seizures. Well, we're going to cover a whole bunch more tomorrow to try to wrap up this series for you guys tomorrow. And it might bleed into next week just a little bit, because we do want to talk about these things. And I actually just noticed. Okay, cool. So with that, let's wrap up this show today. Hope you guys learned some things today about the platform today, and you're going to learn some more stuff tomorrow. And if you have questions, I did post the website down below. You should be able to see it on like Facebook and X and YouTube, I believe, or Rumble, YouTube, and Facebook. You guys can see the link if you guys want to take a look at the party platform and do some research and discovery for yourselves. I really encourage you to do that. And with that, we're going to wrap this show up. I'm going to do the outro, but I think I'm going to play Wyoming Wind today, because you know what? It is really, well, that Wyoming wind is really blowing, at least here in the southeast part of the state, in Cheyenne. It is blowing. I even heard, I said at the beginning of the show, we might have 100-mile-an-hour winds. So stay safe out there. Make sure you open your door with your car facing west. Otherwise, your door is going to get ripped off your car. All that good stuff. Might not even be able to wear a hat today. It might blow off and all that good stuff. So anyways, God bless you guys. Have a great day. I'll see you guys tomorrow on Friday, and we'll see if we can cover the rest of those planks tomorrow. With that, take care. And we're going to go ahead. Let's cue up the outro, and then we'll play Wyoming Wind, because I think that's what's going on today. Take care. Talk to you later, guys.
That's today's episode of Wyoming Beyond the Fence Line with Joseph Kibler, candidate for Wyoming governor in 2026. If this mattered to you, share it, stay engaged, and keep asking hard questions. Be something different. Visit Joseph, 4, WY.com for more information.
That welcome sign on I-25, paint ship still standing proud. Ranch hands lean on rusty gates, reading weather in the clouds. Antelope on the edges, cold dust on our jeans. Four rigs blanking on the rim like a string of prairie dreams. Wyoming wind, you shove those semis sideways on the line, make a 20-foot wall of white in a single night. Drag those tumbleweeds till they're stacked up tight on the old barbed wire. Carry smoke from a branding fire. You steal my hat, you sting my skin, but I was raised by that Wyoming wind. Red dirt stuck in busted boots, pickup rattling down 14. Feedlot steam in the dim sunrise, snow geese cutting clean. L tracks in the timber, sagebrush oceans roll. We pull our hoods tight at the pump, the gust cuts through the soul. You push our trash clear to Nebraska, strip a billboard to the nails, slam a screen door off its hinges, shake the grain out of the rails. You whistle through those cold cars, howl across the powder rim. Every fence line, every windburn grin, got carved by you again. Wyoming wind, you shove those semis sideways on the line, make it 20-foot wall of white in a single night. Drag those tumbleweeds till they're strings of tight on the old barbed wire. Carry smoke from a branding fire. You steal my hat, you sting my skin, but I was raised by that Wyoming wind. Dirt stuck in busted boots, pick up right around 14. Feedlot steam in the dim sunrise, snow geese couldn't clean. L tracks in the timber, sagebrush oceans roll. We pull our hoods tight at the pump, the gust cuts through the song.